Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Thursday, July 17th. Hope your day is going beautifully, and we are so thrilled that you've joined us here on Catholic Connection, EWTN's morning program. On a Wednesday, we have a lot to talk about today. So excited to have my friend Steve Ray with us. He's going to talk to us about the issue of repetitive prayer. This is a question that Catholics often receive from anti-Catholic fundamentalists and others who have a problem with the idea of repetitive prayer. And I always wondered about that because if you read Scripture, it's very clear, especially in the last book of the Bible, in the book of Revelation, where it talks about how the angels and the saints are in heaven saying, holy, 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 over and over and over and over again. So if you're not fond of repetitive prayer, then what do you think is going to happen in heaven? Anyway, we'll talk about that with Steve Ray. And it's important for us to remember that God is not telling us not to pray repetitively. He's telling us not to make it rote. That when we say these prayers, as for example, when we say the beautiful prayer of the Rosary, Hail Mary, full of grace, so we say it with our heart. And sometimes we may drift off or start thinking of something else. But that's okay. Just start all over again. I mean, we're human. That happens. But saying these prayers repeatedly is an incredible way to bring us closer to God and bring us peace. And if you recall, there was a study that just came out on how effective the Rosary is. The National Catholic Register and Catholic News Agency had a big report on that. And we did a story on that, I think it was about 2 months ago. And it's just beautiful in terms of what psychologists and sociologists are saying about the importance of repetitive prayer and what it does for you, for your mind, for your body, and for your soul. So great discussion to be had with our friend Steve Ray. And then, well, I just can't stand it. So many great people on the program today. Dr. Matthew Bunson, the one, the only, from our own EWTN News Division, of course, church historian, noted author, has a great brand new book out about Pope Leo. And he also has written and contributed to some 50-plus books. He's brilliant, and I'm proud to call him a friend. He and I are going to be co-hosting an amazing pilgrimage in October of next year, La Dolce Fide, the sweetness of faith, in the footsteps of the popes. And so we are going to have a great time teaching you about the history and taking you to some of the most important places in the history of the papacy and the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, including, of course, Roma, the Eternal City. We're also going south to Castel Gandolfo and the Vatican Gardens there. We are going to go to Viterbo, the city of the popes, and we're also going to be going to Orvieto, where the Pope lived for some time, and where, of course, we have the Eucharistic miracle, Corpus Christi, and where Thomas Aquinas did a lot of writing and teaching and preaching. And then we're also going to be going to Arezzo, and Arezzo is in Tuscany and a very important papal city. Now, within those different locations, as we'll explain coming up with Matthew, we are doing some very, very unique faith-related activities, and also time for some fun. And on our way back to Rome, after we spend several days in central Italy, we will be having a wonderful wine tasting in our region of Italy, where Deacon Dom and I live part-time, Umbria, the central region of Umbria. So Matthew and I will discuss. That's coming up at 39 minutes past the hour. And we'll talk about the second hour as we get closer to that for our EWTN Radio Extra portion of the program. Weather-wise, we have a system, according to the National Weather Service, in the Gulf that could produce some heavy rainfall and flash flooding for portions of the north central Gulf Coast into tomorrow. Widespread showers and thunderstorms are likely this afternoon into tomorrow, also from Central Plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley, Ohio Valley, and Central Appalachians. Dangerous heat is expected from the lower Mississippi Valley to the mid-Atlantic today. So that is a look at our rundown, as we say in the biz, and also, of course, our weather, what we're looking at in terms of continued storms. Right now, though, there's a lot of news, so we need to get to that currently, 4 minutes past the hour, here on EWTN. Vatican News is reporting the Holy Family Church, the only Catholic church in the Gaza Strip, was hit by a tank this morning, seriously hurting 4 people. Others reportedly wounded more lightly, including the parish priest, Father Gabriele Romanelli. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzabella, Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, telling Vatican News that 2 of the injured persons are at risk of death. The Cardinal also speaking with Vatican News about the developments today.
Good morning. We don't have complete information about what happened in Gaza today because the communication in Gaza is not that simple in these days, mainly today. What we know for sure that there are a tank, they say the IDF said by mistake, but we are not sure about this. They hit the church directly, the Church of the Holy Family, the Latin Church, and there are 4 people seriously wounded. Among these 4, 2 in very dramatic conditions, and their life is a very serious risk of danger. There are also other wounded, injured, but less problematic. Among them also the parish priest, because they were all in the church. We try to get more information as soon as possible.
Earlier, the Patriarch of Jerusalem had posted a press release on X confirming the church was struck by a raid. The statement said there are no fatalities confirmed at the moment, but the church did sustain damage. And according to the Catholic Press Agency, the Holy Family Church is currently hosting around 500 displaced Christians. The U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, is opening up a Center for Faith and eliminating a regulation that banned faith-based groups from receiving disaster loans. Catholic News Agency has this story. The SBA, a branch of the federal government established to bolster the economy by supporting small businesses, announcing they would remove the long-standing regulation as part of the agency's efforts to end faith-based discrimination by the government. The SBA previously prohibiting any group principally engaged in teaching, instructing, counseling, or indoctrinating religion from applying for economic injury disaster loans, a regulation which the SBA is now nixing under the Trump administration. The SBA arguing that the regulation is unconstitutional, citing the 2017 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Trinity Lutheran Church of Columbia, Inc. versus Comer. Mark Mayfield tells us people convicted of fentanyl-related crimes can now face harsher penalties.
This after President Trump signed a bill Wednesday targeting fentanyl trafficking.
And illicit drugs decimated American communities and left us with the largest law enforcement challenge in our country's history.
Families impacted by the fentanyl crisis stood behind Trump at the White House bill signing ceremony. Trump said his administration has declared an all-out war against dealers and traffickers. The Halt All Lethal Trafficking of Fentanyl Act classifies all fentanyl-related substances as Schedule I drugs. That means harsher penalties for people convicted of fentanyl-related crimes. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Senate Republicans are giving a thumbs up to cutting funding for public broadcasting, the controversial World Health Organization, and some foreign aid. Lawmakers narrowly passing a package earlier this morning that would take back $9 billion in spending that had already been approved. It's part of the efforts of the Department of Government Efficiency. Now the measure goes back to the House for approval before heading to the president's desk for a signature. If that happens, a corporation for public broadcasting, which funds NPR and PBS, would lose funding, along with the World Health Organization and the U.S. Agency for International Development. Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri rebuking Democrats' assertions against the bill and pitching the legislation as a way for lawmakers to do some course correction when it comes to wasteful spending that shouldn't have ever been given the green light. He told Fox News Digital that what Democrats want to do is keep as much of this money for their woke pet projects as they can. Brian Shook tells us speculation on the future of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell had Wall Street experiencing some crazy moves yesterday.
Initial reports that Trump's firing of Powell seemed imminent came out during morning trading, sparking a mini sell-off. But when Trump clarified that he had no plans to fire Powell, the markets quickly rebounded, proving the old axiom that investors like certainty. The president has been highly critical of Powell's refusal to cut interest rates. I'm Brian Shook.
Today, protests are being planned around the country against Donald Trump, spearheaded by a Good Trouble Lives On group. And there's an interesting story that's developing. The CEO of an advocacy group says the organization turning down an offer that he said would have been worth around $20 million to help recruit for the rallies against the president. Adam Swart is a CEO and founder of Crowds on Demand, and he made the comments during an interview with News Nation that aired this week. Sorry about that, having trouble playing that clip for you. Today, protests around the country are being planned against Donald Trump, and as we mentioned, spearheaded by Good Trouble Lives On, a group that calls itself a peaceful and nonviolent protest and social change organization. And a witness is describing the lightning strike at a New Jersey archery range that left one person dead and hurt more than a dozen others. This man says everything was calm before that lightning strike.
There was no thunder, and there was a lightning strike, and it hit this tree. I felt the electricity, but when I turned around, I could see that there was at least 7 people down.
This was at an outdoor archery range in Jackson Township Wednesday night. The strike killed a 61-year-old instructor and injured children who were at the practice range. None of the injuries was life-threatening. Forecasters are warning of tropical flooding along the Gulf Coast. Flood warnings are being posted from the Florida Panhandle to south central Louisiana, which could receive over a foot of rain at a rate of up to 3 inches per hour both today and tomorrow. A high flood risk is also possible in the coastal cities of Mobile, Alabama, and Gulfport, Mississippi, where heavy storms could linger and soak the region with several inches of rain. In New Orleans, officials have opened several sandbag distribution sites due to the forecast. And Daniel Martindale tells us Southern California is also facing a chance of rain and thunderstorms, some pretty strong storms today and tomorrow as well.
Forecasters say monsoonal moisture is coming in from the south. Rain could start falling in some areas as early as this afternoon. Today and tomorrow, the mountains will see a 20% chance of thunderstorms. The Inland Empire will also see a 20% chance of isolated thunderstorms tomorrow. The deserts, meanwhile, are facing a slimmer chance of thunder and lightning. I'm Daniel Martindale.
Blood supply is running very low across the nation, with nearly 20% of blood centers on the West Coast reporting just a one-day supply or less. That's according to America's Blood Centers. In Northern California, for example, the Stanford Blood Supply Center is facing a critical shortage with only a few days' supply.
We are in need of every blood type, but critically low right now is O types and A type.
Renee Gibson is Director of Donor Services and says the shortage is due to increased demand from recent surgeries, a traditional slowdown in donations during the summer, and their South Bay Donor Center being closed for repairs. They are urging people to donate blood, and they're urging people to do it not only in California, but if you can do this, to do it across the country as well. Michael Kastner tells us there's a new hole opening up at Yellowstone National Park.
The U.S. Geological Survey says they discovered the large hole back in April while doing some routine maintenance of temperature logging stations at the Norris Geyser Basin. The USGS says the hole is a blue water spring and was not there during their last visit last fall. They say the pool is about 13 feet in diameter and a foot deep and was formed as a result of a hydrothermal explosion caused by pressure changes that result from water turning into steam. The agency said the Norris Geyser Basin is the most dynamic area in Yellowstone Park. I'm Michael Kastner.
And Connie Francis, the iconic singer who is one of the top-selling female artists of all time, has passed away at the age of 87. She died last night, 2 weeks after being taken to the hospital in extreme pain. Her close friend Ron Roberts confirming the news on Facebook this morning. She sold millions of records throughout the 50s and the 60s, with hits such as Who's Sorry Now and Where the Boys Are. And she was the first woman to have a #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 with 1960's Everybody's Somebody's Fool. She made it to the Spotify charts just this year thanks to a TikTok trend using her 1962 song Pretty Little Baby. She was born in New Jersey back in 1937 as Conchetta Franconero and eventually settled on Connie Francis as her stage name. It is a Thursday. We're glad you're listening to EWTN. Steve Ray joins us all about repetitive prayer. Stay tuned. We're having a beautiful Thursday morning. Always great to catch up with our friend Steve Ray, author, speaker, convert, and fearless pilgrimage leader. His website is CatholicConvert.com. And Steve, you know, is a convert from Protestantism, more specifically the Baptist Church, and has some great insights in terms of witnessing and evangelization. You know, Steve, I love this topic because I can remember when Deacon Dom and I first came back to the church, and I worked at a non-Catholic station for about 2 years, the same station that Al worked, as you recall, before he came over to Ave Maria Radio and worked there, of course, for many, many years until we lost him way too soon last year from cancer. But I can remember people at that station coming up to me, and they weren't the Protestants, actually. They were the former Catholics who went into a anti-Catholic fundamentalist church, and they'd say, oh, you do all repetitive prayer. You're a heathen. And I used to wonder, well, wait a minute. I mean, I would go to evangelical events, for the station, or maybe even speak at some, different events for them. And they would spend at least 20, 30 minutes singing and doing beautiful praise and worship, but repeating the same verses over and over and over again as a form of prayer. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is, even though you're singing it, to sing, as St. Augustine said, is to pray twice. So, I mean, you are doing repetitive prayer. So I didn't get it. But they always go back to Matthew 6:7. But when you pray, don't use vain repetition as the heathens do, for they think they shall be heard for their much speaking. So let's talk about why this was such a sore point among Protestants. Thanks for joining us, by the way.
Well, you're welcome. Glad to join you always, Teresa. Well, by the way, you were quoting from the King James Version of the Bible, because that's the only translation that uses the phrase vain repetition. And when I was a Baptist, I was raised in this whole fundamentalist culture, and we were very anti-Catholic, and we would always quote that Catholics pray vain repetitions.
Right.
And they pray memorized prayers. They don't pray from their own heart. They don't know how to pray. They just pray these memorized words, which they're not their own. And I remember when I became Catholic, realizing that back in those days, we were expected to kind of live in a shallow puddle of our own existence, is the way I put it, because we couldn't quote the prayers of others or the church or beautiful prayers and words and songs. We had to come up with our own stuff spontaneously, and it was like trying to splash in a little puddle. When I became a Catholic, it's like immersing myself in this beautiful, warm ocean of all these prayers and devotions, and they're not repetitive in a negative way, and they're not by rote, or I can make them my own. This is the beauty of it. Even when I read the Psalms, those are written prayers, but I can make them my own by reading them and meditating on them, and I can use those words as my own prayers. So I was always against Catholics. You guys are vain repetition. The problem here, Teresa, is that that's the King James Version. In a way, you can say it's old technology. That was translated in the 1611 with Old English. The real Greek word is that it's in that passage is only used one time, and it's the Greek word patologeo, and it doesn't mean repetition. The word defined by lexicons, Greek lexicons, is this: it means to stammer, to babble, to prattle, to utter meaningless sounds, utter purposeless words, or to speak incoherently. Very different from vain repetition. The word is only used one time in the New Testament. That's the only time Jesus ever used that word, or anybody else uses that word. And it doesn't mean repeating words. It means babbling, prattling, meaningless sounds. And the image, I think, that when you look at the commentaries and how people have understood that, what would Jesus have meant that this is how the pagans pray, or the unbelievers pray? Well, I think it goes back to the story in 1 Kings 18 when Elijah is calling down fire from heaven. Remember that? Those two altars. And the 450 prophets of Baal were there. And he kept saying, call upon your God to send fire down. And they were babbling away, and they were cutting themselves with knives to make themselves bleed. And I think that's when Jesus says that do not use the word that he uses is patologeo in Greek. He's referring back to that action of what those prophets were doing, where they're just babbling and prattling on with meaningless sounds, trying to get Baal to listen to them. He says, don't pray like that. When you pray, and then he gives us the Our Father that comes right after that. When you pray, don't pray like the babbling, utterly meaningless sounds like the prophets of Baal did. But when you pray, say, Our Father, which is totally radical. No other religions call God intimately Papa or Father or Daddy. And so that's how he teaches us to pray. So it's really bad. First of all, if someone uses that against you, that you pray vain repetition, call them on the fact that that's not what the Greek word means. That's old technology, old translation. New translations are much better at how they, for example, the English Standard Version, which I really like to use, says, and when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases. Do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do. But it doesn't say we shouldn't repeat prayers. In fact, this is what my article's coming out at Catholic.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. It's coming out Catholic Answers this morning, right?
Yeah, it's going to come out this morning. They told me they're posting it today, this morning, but they're California time, so it'll be probably early afternoon Eastern time. But in that article, I explain, the title of it is "The Bible Instructs Us to Pray Repetitive Prayers." And I never mentioned the rosary in it because they said they have so many articles about the rosary not being repetitive. I said, no, I'm going to write one on how we should pray repetitive prayers. I'm never even going to mention the rosary in it. So it's the way I describe prayer is, what is prayer then? In my paragraph it says prayer is more than just asking God to give us things or do things for us. You know, sometimes we pray, Lord, do this, do that, give me this, give me that, kind of like he's a vending machine or something, you know, pop in a quarter, give me this. But prayer is an attitude of our heart. It's, you know, in 1 Thessalonians 5:17, it says, pray without ceasing. Well, how in the world can I pray without ceasing, Teresa? You're doing a show right now. Your hands aren't folded and your head's not bowed. You're not praying right now. And then when I'm done with this, I'm going to go out and put some mail in the mailbox. How can I pray without ceasing? It's easy if you understand that prayer is an attitude of our heart before God. It's one of my favorite phrases is to practice the presence of God. And what does that mean? When I wake up in the morning, I say, God is present to me today. He's with me all day. I'm in his presence every minute of every day. I can't avoid it. So I'm going to live my life and act as though I'm in God's presence. And I'm going to talk to him during the day. I'm going to commune with him during the day. And so this is what praying is. It's this attitude we have that God is with us, that he's in our presence, and we're talking to him. And the Catechism says, it's the elevation of our mind and our heart. We raise up our mind and our heart all day long. We're doing this to God. We're recognizing he's there. And we do these things. We praise his glory. We petition for things that are desired. We give thanksgiving for good things received. And we make intercession for others. Those are the 4 steps of what a prayer is. It's praising. It is asking. It's giving thanksgiving. And it's interceding for others. And we can repeat those. We don't have to say, well, we can't repeat anything. We can. And many prayers that we pray, even the ones like you mentioned with Protestants, they sing the song with the same refrain over and over again. And they say the same grace at meals over and over again. They can't be consistent with their own inconsistency.
Well, the book of Revelation is pretty clear about what's going on in heaven in terms of, how we're praying repeatedly, in front of the beautiful altar of God and
right.
the saints and over and over again, holy, holy, holy. Well, then why do they want to go to heaven? I mean, I don't understand. It's all you're going to be doing is worshiping God, right?
And if God can't stop repetitive prayers in heaven, how's he ever going to stop repetitive prayers on earth? So this is how my article starts. How do we learn how to pray? Well, heaven teaches us. Then the Psalms and the temple teach us, and then Jesus teaches us, and then the early church teaches us. So we can go through some of those. You mentioned Revelation. So what does heaven teach us about repetitive prayer? Well, in Revelation chapter 4, verse 8, and the 4 living creatures, day and night, without ceasing, they say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and who is and is to come.
Steve, hold that thought. We have to take a break. The music is with us. Hold on one second. We're going to pick that up because I want to dive into that. We're talking about repetitive prayer and why we are supposed to pray repetitively. Steve has an article coming up on Catholic Answers later today that will be posted. You need to check that out. More with Steve Ray when we come back on a Thursday morning. Father Mitch, by the way, we gave him the day off today. Hope you're having a beautiful Thursday morning. As we mentioned, I did forget to mention this at the top of the hour. Father Mitch Pacwa taking the day off today. We'll allow that. He's a very busy man. And I'm so grateful for my friend Steve Ray to be able to come in and talk about a very important topic, how we can defend our faith lovingly and calmly. We don't have to fear anything. Another great apologist, and this is someone that Steve knows really well, my friend John Martinoni, told me a long time ago, Teresa, there's nothing in the Catholic Church that contradicts the Bible, and there's nothing in the Bible that contradicts the Church. And we have to remember that. And if someone tries to challenge us, and we don't have to get nervous, Steve, and even if you don't know the answer right away, just, I don't believe that's correct, let me get back to you. But it's really very, very easy to defend the faith, and you don't have to get defensive about it. I always would just say to people, my response would be, now, I think the rosary is important, but I understand why Catholic Answers didn't want you to include that, because it gives people more evidence to share. But I do think the rosary is important to point out that it's right from Scripture, and that it's basically meditating on the life of Christ. And the two main prayers, right, Hail Mary and the Lord's Prayer, are right from Scripture and right from the Gospel. Yep. So what's the problem? Anyhow, we were talking about... Oh, go ahead.
In my movie, Mary, Mother of God, we're standing at the visitation where the words from the rosary come from. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And I said the rosary is really a meditation on the Gospels, especially since John Paul II put it in the luminous mysteries. Right. It's really a beautiful outline of the life of Christ. And so I end up concluding that section in my movie by saying, have you prayed the Gospel today? Mm-hmm. And that's really what it is. It's a prayer and meditation on the Gospel. And we'll go back to Revelation 4. We kind of got cut off there, but 24 hours a day in heaven, they're singing the same thing, and it says they sing it day and night without ceasing. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who is and who was and is to come. And what's interesting is in the Our Father, he teaches we pray, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Mm-hmm. Right. And if these are the kind of prayers going on in heaven, then obviously he would expect that to also to be done on earth with us. And that's the case. So then the next point I go to, Teresa, is the temple in Jerusalem, which was swelled with prayers. And all of the prayers and the activities in the temple followed the prescribed forms of worship that Moses laid down for them, what they were supposed to do. These psalms were prayed in the temple. In fact, Jesus prayed them in the temple. When he went up to Jerusalem with a family, there were psalms called the pilgrimage psalms, 120 through 134. These were repeated over and over again as they traveled up. They're called the Psalms of Ascent as we go up to Jerusalem. The pilgrims prayed those psalms. And the psalms are called the masterwork of prayer. If you want to understand prayer, you go to the Psalms to do it. Now, Psalm 136 is called the Great Hallel. Hallel means praise. Of all the Psalms, 150 of them, 136 is called the Great Hallel, and it was sung in the temple of Solomon. Therefore, our Lord sang this or chanted it more with the lyre and the timbrels and the trumpet. And I'm just going to read you the first 3 verses of this psalm and tell me what you think of this. And this goes on for 26 verses. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, for his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his steadfast love endures forever and ever. And this goes on for 26 verses, Teresa, repetitive over and over again. And yet it was the great psalm that was sung in the temple, repetitive prayer. And this is what Jesus would have prayed, because that's what they sang in the temple.
Right. And if it's not such a great thing, then then why wasn't it removed from the Bible? Right? I mean, come on.
Exactly. The whole Psalms are repetitive.
Exactly. Exactly. King David, right? I mean, look at David.
It's right.
In the Psalms.
It's called the hymn book of the Hebrews. It's also called the book of prayer for the church. It's the church's hymn book or prayer book, and it is repetitive over and over again. So if a Protestant wants to accuse Catholics of repetitive prayer, they should never, ever, ever read Psalm 136.
And
Jesus. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask you. I just think it's kind of silly, this argument, because I guess it's not from their perspective, because no, I think it's changing. So many Catholics would never even be able to, for many years, answer the questions that they present, the way they present them, and they present them in a very biased way, and kind of like a trick way to try to catch Catholics. But again, I think if even we know a little bit, and I think so many Catholics, especially our audience, know a lot more Scripture than they think, we can answer those questions. Just stop and think about it. You don't have to get nervous. You don't have to. I get a lot of emails, people saying, well, my cousin left the church and says this about the Catholic Church, or my friend says this. I'm like, okay, well, all right. You know what I like to do, Steve, and let me get your opinion on this, is I like to give people the resources, like I'll send them to a website like yours or John Martinoni's or Catholic Answers, or I'll send them an article, maybe the article and I want them to read. I want them to learn. I don't want to give them the quick answers because that's how I learned. Because I was challenged over the years when I came back to the church by a lot of former Catholics, as I mentioned in our introduction. And I had to dig in and I had to learn and I had to study Scripture. And it really helped me to do this on my own. Not that I didn't ask advice. I mean, I even out of the blue one day called up, got Scott Hahn's number. Did I ever tell you this story? I got Scott Hahn's number and I called him out of the blue and he called me back. And he talked to me for like 20 minutes. It was amazing. Anyway, bottom line is we have to do our homework on this, right?
Yes, of course. I get people that write to me, Steve, what about this? I said, look it up. I said, I can't do your homework for you. You're never going to learn if you don't do it yourself.
Right.
But back to the repetitive prayer. Does Jesus ever pray repetitive prayers? He's the one that said, don't pray like the heathens do. But did he ever pray repetitive prayers? Well, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays, my Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but you will. In verse 42, it says, quote, for the second time, Jesus prayed the exact same words. Then in verse 44, it says, quote, prayed for the third time, saying the exact same words again. Take this cup from me. So he asked his Father 3 times in a row for the same thing. He repeated the question. Didn't his Father hear him the first time? Why did he have to repeat it 3 times? Is God busy and he can't hear his Son down in heaven? No, it's because that's the way we're to pray. In fact, when Jesus tells us, ask and it'll be given you, seek and you'll find, knock and it'll be open to you, ask, seek, and knock are in the present tense. And in the Greek, you could translate that, keep asking, keep knocking. And here's from 2 commentaries, Protestant commentaries, by the way. The imperatives ask, seek, and knock are in the present tense, being asking should be continual. Or another translation said the present tense can be translated keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking, something that should be done continual. That's repetitive, and Jesus is the one that taught us that, even in his very words. And one more, in the parable of the unjust judge, a widow comes, Jesus uses. He's telling us about praying persistently and repetitively to God. This was the point of the parable. A widow comes to an unjust judge to ask for justice. She keeps coming and coming, and he doesn't want to answer. Then the judge said, this widow keeps bothering me. I will give her justice so that she does not beat me down with her continually coming and asking. And then how does the Lord respond? And if the unjust judge will give it due to her persistence and repetition, will not God give justice to you who cry out to him day and night? Repetitively? I added the word repetitively, but it's implied there. So Jesus, not only did he pray repetitive prayers, but he told us to keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking, and to be persistent in prayer, and God will give it to us. So there we go. See, again and again, we're taught that we need to repeat. We need to pray.
Steve, out of time, but going to direct people to Catholic Answers and also Steve Ray's website, CatholicConvert.com. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, I can't tell you how excited I am to join my friend and colleague at EWTN, the amazing Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News, papal biographer, church historian, and just a wealth of information about all things Catholic and beyond. We're going to be doing a beautiful pilgrimage next October of 26, and we'd love for you to join us. It is just such a unique itinerary. Living La Dolce Fide, the sweetness of faith, in the footsteps of the popes, October 8th through the 16th, brought to you by, of course, Tees Italy and Corporate Travel and Dr. Bunson, October 8th through the 16th. And we are going to give you information on how to find it. I do have it on my Facebook page and on my website, and we can also give you more details as we move through the interview. Matthew, I'm so excited about joining you on this, and I can't wait for our pilgrims to just get even a week's worth or more of your knowledge on this topic. This is really a unique itinerary, isn't it?
It is very much so. And I was laughing when you and I first started talking about doing a pilgrimage together, because I've had the privilege of joining here and there for an afternoon or so with some of your pilgrimages, and having a chance to spend some time with some of the pilgrims who go with you. And I remember even thinking to myself, boy, I'd I'd happily go on a pilgrimage with you without doing anything else, just being a pilgrim. So to be able to, because you have so much fun, and the places you go are very, very special because you are such an expert on Italy. So to be able to do a pilgrimage with you and to spend time these days talking about such an important topic in the life of the Church of the popes, this is very special for me, and I'm very grateful that you invited me.
Well, I'm honored because, I think the world of you. But I think the reason we have so much fun is because I am so excited about, I've been back in the church now, my husband and I, for over 30 years. And it's such a bottomless well in terms of the beauty, in terms of the saints, in terms of the teachings. And every time I turn around, there's something new that I learn or see in Italy, in a particular town. And so to have you there to be able to tap into your wisdom on the popes, especially with your book. And a lot of people, the places that we're going, even in Rome, Matthew, people are not aware of in terms of there's these little hidden places, these off the beaten path places that we're going to be taking them to. We're working on, I think it's already been approved, going down to the barracks of the Swiss Guards, which is really quite neat. And then we're also going to be going, there's a special passage, tell us about that, in Rome, that we're going to be able to experience with the pilgrims.
Yeah, it's sort of a perfect metaphor for the history of the popes because it's a secret passageway, but it's really not very secret if you have spent any time in Rome. And there's this sort of an alleyway, an elevated one along the walls that connect the Vatican with Castel San Angelo, and it's called the Passetto. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of a safety emergency path for popes in the event of an emergency, obviously, a crisis. And it's called a secret, but it's in front of everybody. And we think of it especially in 1527, when one of the popes, Clement VII, had to run for his life when the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V sacked Rome, who was a Catholic, of course, sacked Rome, and the Pope had to flee from the Vatican Palace to Castel San Angelo for safety. To be able to walk that was very, very difficult over the years, and happily, we're now in a position where you can do these tours along the Passetto. So these are the little snapshots of history that you've talked about that people don't really think about or don't always have access to.
And also, after we land, we're going to be heading up to a town that is just so stunningly beautiful, and there's so much history there related to the popes. It's actually called the City of the Popes, and that's Viterbo in northern Lazio. And you've been there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. And we just went through a papal conclave.
Right.
And the conclave system that we know of today essentially began there because that was one of the spots where the longest interregnum in history took place. And it was the place where the people of Viterbo got so tired of the cardinals not making up their mind that they tore parts of the roof off so that when it rained, obviously the cardinals were left to the rain itself and reduced them to bread and water. And the Pope who subsequently was elected, that's Gregory X, Blessed Gregory X, created the conclave system that we have today. So you'll be able to see where all of that happened. And to be able to walk those streets is going to be very special. But I'm also very excited about where we'd be going right after that, which is, of course, the magnificent town of Orvieto.
Yeah, Orvieto is one of my favorites, and there's so much there. I mean, you have the Eucharistic miracle, of course, which actually happened in Bolsena, but is housed still, the Corpus Christi miracle, in the amazing Cathedral of Orvieto. That is a very papal town as well, is it not?
Yeah, you had popes who would depart Rome. In some cases, they'd take the whole papal court with them. In times, again, of strife and difficulty. And so a lot of the medieval popes, you find them sort of sprinkled about the towns of Umbria and even into Tuscany. And they found safety there, but they obviously certainly left their imprint in the history of the papacy.
Yeah, and it's just so pretty, and it's very unique because it sits on top of, it's an old Etruscan town, it sits on top of a mountain, and in order to get there, you obviously, we can drive the pilgrims up, but you also can take, the funicula or an elevator way, way, way up, and then we'll be staying in a lovely hotel where Deacon Dom and I have stayed right around the corner literally around the corner from the Duomo there. And this is just a little bit of a taste of what you'll be getting if you join us on Living the Dolce Fede in the Footsteps of the Popes, October 8th through the 16th in 2026. 6 with my guest, Dr. Matthew Bunson. So, Matthew, tell us about our spiritual director. I'm so excited for Father Thomas to join us.
Yeah, so our spiritual director is going to be Father Thomas Petrie, who is a Dominican, a theologian, just departed as the president of the Dominican House of Studies here in Rome. He's very well known for radio, for television. He's also one of the most fun Dominicans you'll ever meet, and we both know that Dominicans tend to be a lot of fun.
Well, I can't wait to let him loose in Orvieto and talk about Aquinas, because in the Eucharistic Chapel of the Corporal, the Eucharistic Miracle, Thomas Aquinas is all over the place in those frescoes.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I think he has the most followers of any Dominican in the world on X. So that tells you something about his appeal, but also he's a brilliant homilist, and I'm looking forward to his reflections, too.
So we have, of course, we're going to be going back to Rome at the end. We'll have several days in Rome, but then we go up to Arezzo. Now, Arezzo is a beautiful city in Tuscany, and Deacon Dom and I went there right before all the coverage of the Pope began. It was the first weekend we were in Rome. Then I had to get back down, obviously, to do the show for the conclave. But I loved Arezzo. It's the first time we were there, and it's such a pretty place. And that's very important, because that's where Pope Gregory is buried. So we're going to be having Mass there at the church, I believe. But then kind of pulling it all together, having been in Viterbo, Orvieto, and then going to Arezzo before heading down to Rome.
Yeah, that's right. Arezzo is, if Viterbo was the birthplace of the conclave system, Arezzo is also the place where it was first held, following the death of Gregory X, as you noted. So we're sort of tracing the history of not just conclaves, but the whole of the papacy. It's why we're focused heavily as we are on Rome, especially going to places like St. John Lateran, Santa Maria Maggiore, Santa Sabina, the Aventine Hill, with its connections, obviously, to Gregory the Great and also the Dominicans there. And then, of course, St. Peter's, a beautiful tour of the Sistine Chapel and the catacombs of Callistus. So there's an endless amount to see, but I'm especially looking forward to, I know we're hoping to do the Scavi tour.
Yes.
And to have a papal audience, part of the general audience with Pope Leo.
Yeah, and I believe we're confirming Dr. Liz Lev as our guide. She always does all of our Rome tours, and she's just off the charts amazing. But the other point that I wanted to make is, given all the attention now on Castel Gandolfo with Pope Leo spending time there again, a lot of people haven't had the chance to go south of Rome to Castel Gandolfo, and I don't think they realize just how beautiful it is. It is such a gorgeous lakeside above Lake Albano, a volcanic lake, but it is so peaceful. It's so charming. And to see the Papal Palace there in the Vatican Gardens, that's going to be an extra treat.
Yeah, it really is. And hats off, or zucchetto off, I guess, in this case, to Pope Leo for making the decision to go back, which is one of the great traditions in the history of the Pope. You go all the way back, really, to Urban VIII, the great Barberini Pope, who really established the papacy at Castel Gandolfo. And that Pope Leo right now is staying at the Villa Barberini in Castel Gandolfo. But you're also right. Just the drive out to the Alban Hills is worth it. But then to be able to spend a day or so in Castel Gandolfo itself, to do a tour of the Apostolic Palace, and then to have a dinner in Castel Gandolfo, it's a rich tie as well to Pope Benedict XVI, because one of his last acts as Pope was to go to Castel Gandolfo, and his resignation from the papacy took effect in Castel Gandolfo itself. So it has also additional meaning in the modern history of the papacy.
Yeah, this is such a special itinerary, and I love it, because I'm always trying to get people to do things a little bit differently when they think about Italy, to think outside the box. The other point, too, is that we're going to 3 different regions. We're going to be in Lazio, obviously, for Rome and for Viterbo and for Castel Gandolfo, but we're going to be in Umbria with Orvieto, and then we're going to be in Tuscany. So they get a real flavor of 3 very different regions. And that's what I really love about this itinerary, being someone who, as you know, lives in Italy part-time, to show people that each region has, well, there's always those connections to the church, but each region has such beauty.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And each region has its own flavors, its own characteristics. There's that great saying about Rome, that una vita non ne basta. You know, a lifetime isn't enough
Amen.
That's certainly true with Italy. I know you've written whole books on that particular subject. But
It's crazy. It's just every time I turn around, there's something else I learn. There's a story I learned about St. Francis, and I think I've been to Assisi probably 50 times, easy, in all the years I've been doing tours and traveling to Italy. And we had such a great guide when I was working with Steve Ray on his recent pilgrimage in May. This young guy, never had him before. He was wonderful. He took us to this little alleyway, this little street, and we're standing in front of this house. And it's a house of apparently one of St. Francis's best friends when he was just first starting out the order, when his family thought he was nuts, right? And he's down near where St. Mary of the Angels is now, and his order's down there in the Portucula, the little portion church that they started. And the parents of St. Francis say to this friend, you have to go down there and you have to get him back. Okay, so you're the one who's going to bring Francis back. Mm-hmm. After 3 days, this young man joins the Franciscan order. And I never heard that story. And I've been to Assisi a million times. So this is a thing about Italy. It's so exhaustive. I mean, you can't exhaust all the beauty about the faith. So I'm super excited. I'm excited that your beautiful wife, Bonnie, with whom I've bonded over many different issues, she's going to be joining us. And Deacon Dom will be there to assist Father at Mass. And so we'd love for you to join us, myself and Dr. Matthew Bunson, of course.
And we have to add one quick thing, too.
Sure, go ahead.
Part of this itinerary, wine tasting.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot that. How could I forget that? I'm 100% Italian. Yes, and I'm going to push. We're still working on the place. I want to do a wine tasting in Umbria as we're on our way back from Arezzo, because people overlook the wines of Umbria, and they're fantastic. So I'm going to suggest that it be in Umbria, but we will continue to talk about this. Matthew, thank you for taking time out of your schedule, not only to talk to me today, but to join us on this amazing pilgrimage. I think it's just going to be fantastic.
Oh, it's a privilege. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope everyone can sign up for this.
Yes, and we are willing to take 2 buses. Right now we're looking at starting with 1. We already have a few people on a waiting list, so please, if you're interested, you can contact Corporate Travel. Their website is ctscentral.net. ctscentral.net, or you could email either Dr. Bunson or myself. It's on our Facebook pages and websites. You can go to teresatomio.com and just go to the event section, or shoot me an email and we'll get you in touch with Corporate Travel. This is filling up already. Next October, join me and Dr. Bunson and Father Petrie to talk all about the footsteps of the popes next fall, God willing, the 26th in Italy. We'll be right back. July 17th is a Thursday. Hope you're having a beautiful July so far. Summertime. Love this time of year. Hope you do too. Coming up in the second hour on EWTN's Radio Extra, 2 Cents came across a very interesting story in what's happening in Canada regarding euthanasia and how so many people are not aware of the extreme measures the country is taking and going even further with some proposed legislation. And this is similar to what I was talking about earlier this week in terms of what the gospel is telling us about being aware, having our eyes open. It's part of our responsibility to be aware of things that can hurt people, including not only our souls, but physically to affect the dignity in the human person. So we'll talk about that in 2 cents. And very excited to have a Michigander on with me, Dr. Dan Osborn, theologian for the wonderful Diocese of Saginaw, Michigan, talking about a new national Marian survey from the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. How do we view Mary? What does it mean? He's got the results, and there'll be a new article that's going to be posted today with our friends at Our Sunday Visitor. He will explain. So that is the second hour of Catholic Connection here on EWTN's Radio Extra on a Thursday. And don't forget, we would love for you to join me and Dr. Bunson, of course, from EWTN, and of course his wonderful expertise on church history. We are going to some very unique places. In addition to Rome, we're going to Castel Gandolfo. We are going to Arezzo, and we are going to Viterbo, the city of the popes, and Orvieto, the home of the Eucharistic miracle, and so much there about Thomas Aquinas. That's next year. Check it out, ctscentral.net. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email. We'll be right back on a Thursday for hour number 2 with you of Catholic Connection. Hope you can join us.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomio, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tamio.
Hope your Thursday is going beautifully. July 17th, 2025. Second hour of Catholic Connection here on EWTN Radio Extra. We have a great lineup for you. Very excited to have Dr. Dan Osborn back with us this morning, a theologian for the Diocese of Saginaw. He joined me several months ago to talk about research he was doing regarding our Blessed Mother, a survey. He has the results now from the Center of Applied Research in the Apostolates. And today, breaking news here on Catholic Connection, he has a special article that's being posted on osv.com regarding the results and what they mean and how Our Lady is viewed and the impact it has on the Church, the role of Our Lady in our faith. So it's very exciting stuff, and look forward to chatting with Dan for not one but two segments. In the T's 2 cents, I came across a very alarming story about what's happening across, at least from me in Detroit. Canada is very close across the Detroit River. Very sad to see that a lot of Canadians are unaware of just how extreme their government is when it comes to euthanasia. And so I want to take a look at that and reminding us what Pope Leo talked to us about this past Sunday in his beautiful homily and reflection on the gospel of the Good Samaritan. Why was the Samaritan keenly aware of the man on the road when so many others who were quote-unquote religious walked on by? And our responsibility as believers to be aware. And to be aware means that we have to be engaged and we have to pray for the Lord to open our eyes to these situations that are in our culture that affect the dignity of the human person. So we'll talk about that in 2 cents. First, though, let's get to the weather. The National Weather Service is telling us we have heavy rainfall along the central Gulf Coast, thunderstorms from the plains to the central Appalachians, and heat across the east. We have a system in the Gulf that could produce heavy rainfall and flash flooding for portions of the north central Gulf Coast. That's into Saturday. We have widespread showers and thunderstorms that are likely this afternoon into Friday from Central Plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley, Ohio Valley, and the Central Appalachians. And then we have dangerous heat expected from the lower Mississippi Valley to the Mid-Atlantic today. Also, I wanted to thank Dr. Matthew Bunson, who's a very, very busy fellow Catholic evangelizer. He joined me in the first hour of Catholic Connection this morning. If you missed it, you can go back, of course, and listen to our archives. But we were talking about a beautiful pilgrimage you're going to be doing, and that is coming up next October in 2026, in the footprints of the popes. And of course, Matthew is a church historian, a church expert, and he just released a beautiful book all about Pope Leo XIII, a portrait of our new pope. So a perfect person with whom to partner on this journey that we will take across Italy. 3 regions we'll be touching, including the region of Lazio, which of course is where Rome is located. We'll be going to Rome, the Eternal City. We'll be going to Castel Gandolfo, where the Pope is vacationing once again. We'll be going to Viterbo in northern Lazio, the city of the popes. Fantastic, beautiful medieval town with great papal history. Then up to my region of Umbria. We'll be going to Orvieto for the Eucharistic miracle and learn more about St. Thomas Aquinas and his writings and his work with the popes there to promote the Eucharist. And then up to Arezzo, another city strongly related to the Pope. So the first conclave was held after the debacle in Viterbo. We'll talk about that. And then we will have a wine tasting before spending time in Rome, and then, of course, wrapping up there. So that's coming up next October. If you'd like to join us, as I said, ctscentral.net is the website for corporate travel service. You can also email either myself or Dr. Bunson, and you can contact me through my website, teresatamio.com, or travelitalyexpert.com. We already have people signed up. We have about 10 people already that expressed interest. So first come, first serve. We will be open to 2 buses. Right now we're concentrating on 1. But if you are interested, again, ctscentral.net. Right now it's 4 minutes past the hour. It's a Thursday morning, July 17th. Let's get started with the news in the second hour here on EWTN Radio Extra. The Holy Family Church, the only Catholic church in the Gaza Strip, according to Vatican News, hit by a tank this morning, seriously hurting 4 people. Others were wounded more lightly, including the parish priest, Father Gabriele Romanelli. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, telling Vatican News that 2 of those who were hurt are in critical condition. He also talked a great deal with Vatican News about the situation, trying to find out the latest information as to what's happening there.
Good morning. We don't have complete information about what happened in Gaza today. because the communication with Gaza is not that simple in these days, mainly today. What we know for sure that there are a tank, they say the IDF said by mistake, but we are not sure about this. They hit the church directly, the Church of the Holy Family, the Latin Church, and there are 4 people seriously wounded. Among these 4, 2 in very dramatic conditions, and their life is a very serious risk of danger. There are also other wounded, injured, but less problematic. Among them also the parish priest, because they were all in the church. We try to get more information as soon as possible.
Earlier, he posted a press release on X confirming the church was struck by a raid. The statement said there are no fatalities at the moment, but the church had sustained damage. The Holy Family Church, by the way, currently hosting around 500 displaced Christians. The U.S. Small Business Administration is opening a Center for Faith and, as Catholic News Agency explains this morning, eliminating a regulation that banned faith-based groups from receiving disaster loans. The SBA, a branch of the federal government, established to bolster the economy by supporting small businesses, announcing they would remove the long-standing regulation as part of the agency's efforts to end faith-based discrimination by the government. The SBA previously prohibited any group principally engaged in teaching, instructing, counseling, or indoctrinating religion from applying for economic injury disaster loans, a regulation which the SBA is now nixing under the Trump administration. The SBA arguing the regulation is unconstitutional, citing the 2017 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Trinity Lutheran Church of Columbia versus Comer. Mark Mayfield tells us people convicted of fentanyl-related crimes can now face harsher penalties.
This after President Trump signed a bill Wednesday targeting fentanyl trafficking.
And illicit drugs decimated American communities and left us with the largest law enforcement challenge in our country's history.
Families impacted by the fentanyl crisis stood behind Trump at the White House bill signing ceremony. Trump said his administration has declared an all-out war against dealers and traffickers. The Halt All Lethal Trafficking of Fentanyl Act classifies all fentanyl-related substances as Schedule I drugs. That means harsher penalties for people convicted of fentanyl-related crimes. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 48, and on this vote, the bill is amended as passed.
Senate Republicans giving the big thumbs up to cutting funding for PBS, public broadcasting, the controversial World Health Organization, and some foreign aid. Lawmakers narrowly passing a package early this morning that would take back $9 billion in spending that had already been approved. It's part of the efforts of the Department of Government Efficiency. Now the measure goes back to the House for approval before heading to the president's desk for a signature. If that happens, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting funding NPR and PBS would lose funding. We'll have more on that on, of course, Fact Check Friday tomorrow, along with the World Health Organization and the U.S. Agency for International Development. Also this morning, speculation on the future of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, as Brian Shook tells us, had Wall Street experiencing some whiplash yesterday.
Initial reports that Trump's firing of Powell seemed imminent came out during morning trading, sparking a mini sell-off. But when Trump clarified that he had no plans to fire Powell, the markets quickly rebounded, proving the old axiom that investors like certainty. The president has been highly critical of Powell's refusal to cut interest rates. I'm Brian Shook.
The CEO of an advocacy group in his organization said he turned down an offer that he said would have been worth around $20 million to help recruit for a national rally against President Donald Trump. Adam Stewart is CEO and founder of Crowds on Demand and made the comments during a News Nation interview that aired this week.
Aligned with the organizers of the July 17th movement have approached us, and in fact, we rejected an offer that probably is worth around $20 million.
$20 million?
Correct. I mean, this is a nationwide thing, right? It's not to say I would have made $20 million personally, but the value of the contract would have been worth around that amount nationwide to organize huge demonstrations around the country. But personally, I just don't think it's effective. So I'm not trying to call myself virtuous for rejecting it. What I'm saying is I'm rejecting it not because I don't want to take the business, but because, frankly, this is going to be ineffective. It's going to make us all look bad.
Protests around the country are being planned against Donald Trump, and they're spearheaded by the group Trouble Lives On, Good Trouble Lives On. They call themselves a peaceful and nonviolent protest and social change organization. A witness is describing the lightning strike at a New Jersey archery range that left one person dead and injured more than a dozen others. This man says everything was calm before that lightning strike.
No rain, there was no thunder, and it was a lightning strike, and it hit this tree. I felt the electricity, but when I turned around, I could see that there was at least 7 people down.
This was at an archery range in Jackson Township Wednesday night. The strike killing a 61-year-old instructor and injuring children who were at the practice range. None of the injuries was life-threatening. Forecasters are warning of tropical flooding, as we mentioned in the weather forecast, along the Gulf Coast. Flood warnings are being posted from the Florida Panhandle to south central Louisiana, which could receive over a foot of rain at a rate of up to 3 inches per hour both today and tomorrow. A high flood risk is also possible in the coastal cities of Mobile, Alabama, and Gulfport, Mississippi. There, heavy storms could linger and soak the region with several inches of rain. In New Orleans, officials have opened several sandbag distribution sites due to the forecast. Daniel Martindale tells us Southern California, meanwhile, facing a chance of rain and thunderstorms both today and tomorrow.
Forecasters say monsoonal moisture is coming in from the south. Rain could start falling in some areas as early as this afternoon. Today and tomorrow, the mountains will see a 20% chance of thunderstorms. The Inland Empire will also see a 20% chance of isolated thunderstorms tomorrow. The deserts, meanwhile, are facing a slimmer chance of thunder and lightning. I'm Daniel Martindale.
Blood supplies running low across the nation, apparently, with nearly 20% of blood centers, for example, on the West Coast reporting just a one-day supply or less. That's according to America's Blood Centers. In Northern California, for example, at the Stanford Blood Center, they say they're facing a critical blood shortage with only a few days' supply.
We are in need of every blood type, but critically low right now is O types and A types.
That's Renee Gibson. She's a director of donor services and says the shortage is due to increased demand from recent surgeries, a traditional slowdown in donations during the summer, and their South Bay Donor Center being closed for repairs. They're urging people to donate blood. You can visit the Stanford Blood Center's website to find a donation location if you're in that part of the country. And Michael Kastner tells us there's a new hole that's opened up at Yellowstone National Park.
The U.S. Geological Survey says they discovered the large hole back in April while doing some routine maintenance of temperature logging stations at the Norris Geyser Basin. USGS says the hole is a blue water spring and was not there during their last visit last fall. They say the pool is about 13 feet in diameter and a foot deep and was formed as a result of a hydrothermal explosion caused by pressure changes that result from water turning into steam. The agency said the Norris Geyser Basin is the most dynamic area in Yellowstone Park. I'm Michael Kastner.
And Connie Francis, the iconic singer who is one of the top-selling female artists of all time, has passed away at the age of 87. She died last night, 2 weeks after being taken to the hospital in extreme pain. She sold millions of records through the 50s and the 60s with hits like Who's Sorry Now and Where the Boys Are, and was the first woman to have a #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 with 1960's Everybody Is Somebody's Fool. It is a Thursday morning, July 17th, 2025. More Catholic Connection coming your way. Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's 10:16 on a Thursday morning, July 17th. It's a story that was very troubling to me, not surprising, but troubling to me when I read about what was happening across the river from me in Canada. We live in the Detroit area, so Canada is very close to us. And in some ways, Windsor, which is a lovely town right across the river from downtown Detroit, is often considered a suburb because the transportation back and forth is so easy, whether you go through the Windsor Tunnel or go over the Ambassador Bridge or go up to, let's say, the Port Huron area in Michigan, the Thumb area, go across on the Blue Water Bridge to lovely Sarnia. And so there's a lot of back and forth between Canada and Michigan in this part of the country. And so news of Canada and things that are happening there is quite prominent here in this part of the Midwest. But there's a story that came across in the Christian Daily Newswire says many Canadians remain ignorant of expansion and euthanasia laws. And this was based on a study. The story was posted just a few days ago. Many Canadians remain unaware that euthanasia laws have passed and further legal challenges. Now listen to this one. And we ran this story in the news a few weeks ago, such as allowing self-termination for mental illness alone, are proposed by lawmakers according to the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. The EFC issuing the warning after evaluating social media reactions to its recently published brochure, Euthanasia in Canada, which outlines ethical and practical concerns about the country's Medical Assistance in Dying program, or the MAID program. The organization, which opposes euthanasia and is very concerned about the realities of its implementation in the country, said online responses to the resource revealed significant gaps in public awareness. Many of the comments we've seen on social media have confirmed another one of our concerns, that many Canadians are not aware of how the new euthanasia law has already been expanded and that more changes have been proposed. Now, a little background for you. Legislation passed in 2021 and paved the way for allowing euthanasia solely on the basis of mental illness. According to the EFC, this marked a significant expansion of MAID eligibility to include individuals with a serious illness, disease, or disability, even if their natural death is not reasonably foreseeable. Currently, individuals with mental illness as their sole condition are not eligible, but this is set to change in March of 2027 unless Canadian lawmakers delay or repeal the legislation. The EFC has previously submitted arguments to the Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying as to why Canada should reject any notion of allowing MAID for mental illness. The evangelical organization cited Canadian Institute for Health data showing that 1 in 10 Canadians wait more than 5 months for counseling services, and highlighted other data of which citizens may be unaware. Legal requirements also state that for people seeking euthanasia, for those who are not otherwise dying, require only a 3-month assessment period from the initial appointment to the day the patient's life is ended. Recommendations concerning mature minors were also put forth by the Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying in its report entitled Medical Assistance in Dying: Choices for Canadians. According to the EFC, the committee recommended the Government of Canada amend the eligibility criteria set out to include in the criminal code to include minors deemed to have the requisite decision-making capacity upon assessment. Minors. Another recommendation, the Government of Canada restrict MAID for mature minors to those whose natural death is reasonably foreseeable. That the Government of Canada establish a requirement that where appropriate, the parents of guardians of a mature minor could be consulted in the course of the assessment, but that the will of a minor who is found to have the requisite decision-making capacity ultimately take priority. The EFC pointed out the committee's recommendations are not binding on the Canadian government. There is no legislation to make mature minors eligible yet, but it has been raised and is being promoted by some groups. The EFC is very concerned this has been proposed by a parliamentary committee. And the other big concern is that people are not aware of this, or not aware of enough of this. And this organization, this Christian organization, is urging Canadians who are concerned about the expansion of MAID laws to contact their local members of Parliament and voice their concerns. It will take all of us working together to bring about change. Share your concerns and this information with your family and friends. So this brings us back to this whole issue that we discussed on Sunday during the Gospel. And if you went to Mass, hopefully you heard a good homily on this, and maybe you had a chance to hear or see or read what Pope Leo said about the Good Samaritan and what the responsibility is for us. And this ties directly again into this story. We need to be aware of who is our brother. Okay? Who's our neighbor? And this is a question that I talked about that was raised by my associate pastor in his wonderful homily on Sunday. That Jesus turns the question from the man of the law, turns the question on its head, because the man of the law wants to know, who's my neighbor? Of whom, about whom am I supposed to be worried and concerned? And so this man wanted a list. Didn't want to work too hard at it. Just tell me. Tell me whom I'm supposed to help, and then I can put it in a nice little box and make sure I go to heaven. But the responsibility Jesus puts on us, because it is work to keep your eyes open, to keep your ears open, to keep your heart open, and to be aware of the issues that affect us, especially when it comes to the dignity of the human person. For example, the Good Samaritan being aware that a fellow human being was on the road, beaten, bloodied, bruised, and needed help. And so he helps him because he's aware. Whereas the other two people who were religious, had titles, just walked on by as if the man didn't even exist. And it's an analogy for us for sometimes the way we live our lives, walking on by, not paying attention, getting busy. Now, I know we can't be consuming news all the time. And as a matter of fact, many of my books are about limiting our media intake. But that doesn't mean we limit our intake of awareness of the human condition. And unless we are aware of what our government is trying to do to us on any different occasion, whether it's Canada, whether it's the U.S., whether it's Great Britain, I don't care where it is. The Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us we need to be involved in terms of helping one another. And even the Catechism on Immigration, the first part of it talks about us being open, the Catechism paragraphs on immigration, being open to the vulnerable, to those in need, to the widow, to the immigrant, to the orphan. But the second part of that also requires the people who are coming into this country, and this is often not taught, unfortunately, to be responsible and to follow the law, and that a country has a right to protect itself. That's a topic for another day. But my point is that church teaching is very clear that we have to be aware of what's going on and be willing to speak up and make a difference. So this is obviously a big concern in Canada, and to me, it sounds like, you always follow the money. Sounds like money has a lot to do with these new efforts that they're trying to put forward in 2027, where someone with a mental illness, and what determines who's going to decide what a mental illness is? We know all the problems that they've had in various states and in various countries where they have legalized so-called assisted suicide. Similar to what we've seen happen with the transgender agenda and these so-called reassignment surgeries, where they promised and even put into various laws that there would be psychological examinations, there would be counseling, they would make sure and get to the bottom of the issue to see whether this person, this child, especially in the case of a minor, had just come forward because of a trauma in their life, maybe abuse or something else with which they were struggling. Now, did you notice in the article where it says that people in Canada can be waiting months for mental health assistance, for counseling, for other support? And so perhaps this also has to do with money. That, gee, we could save a lot of money if people with serious mental health conditions, such as, let's say, someone is struggling with depression, which is a very, very serious condition, or schizophrenia, or some other mental health problem. We don't have to deal with it. We can just encourage them to take their own life. We need to be aware, and we need to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. We'll be right back. Listen to your mother. That's what my mother used to say, Rosie Posey, M-O-T-H-A. And I'm glad that our Mama Mary is having a vital impact on the One Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And we have proof of this. Groundbreaking research confirming Mary's vital impact on the church. Insights from a theologian who initiated the study. And that would be our guest, Dr. Dan Osborn, who's with the Diocese of Saginaw, Michigan, not too far from us here in southeastern Michigan. Dr. Dan, great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Wonderful to be with you again, Teresa.
Now, I love the way you open this is putting together a piece that you wrote on this. You said, in the coming years, some Roman pilgrims will undoubtedly search for Pope Francis's tomb at St. Peter's Basilica. only to learn that in accord with the Holy Father's wishes, his mortal remains are actually located in St. Mary Majors. The relic of the manger where Mary placed her newborn son is also housed here, as is a work of art which Pope Francis prayed before 126 times over the 12 years of his papacy, the icon of Mary, protectress of the Roman people. This is a great way for us to think about this, because Mary and St. Mary Major is such an amazing church. It's one of the major basilicas, and of course people going there for the Jubilee year will walk through the doors for the indulgence. But the fact that, as you point out, that the Pope wanted to be buried there indicates, I think, the influence of Mary on not only Pope Francis, but so many of our popes, right, Dan?
Yes, he was definitely building on the Marian legacy of his predecessors, and he's the first pope since 1669 who requested that his mortal remains be entombed at St. Mary Majors, and I found that spoke volumes about his appreciation for the Marian dimension of the church.
All right, so the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, CARA, released this report in which you were very involved. And this is an idea for the actual project that came to you a while ago. And I remember you explaining it to us when you were first on this program. But remind our listeners as to why you wanted to do this.
Well, I go back to November 30th, 2023. Pope Francis met with members of the International Theological Commission, and he asked theologians to really explore with fresh vigor the Marian dimension of the church, and that touched me because that happened to be a topic of my thesis work when I studied at the Angelicum in Rome. So in prayer, I discerned, it was almost like a why not grace, and thanks to many people helping, and you are one of them, Teresa, to get the word out when we were trying to raise funds for this project. It has come to fruition, and I'm so deeply grateful.
All right, so how many responses did you get? Was the response high?
Of those who received the survey from CARA, a little over 1,000 bishops, priests, deacons, and religious superiors did respond. And the director of CARA said this might be the first ever Marian study with social science behind it.
Yeah, it's just very powerful. All right, so there are a number of different findings, and I'm glad we have two segments this morning to plow through these because they're very important. So let's start with Mary's role as mother of the church. What did you find in this survey? How important is that?
Yes, it stood out for me that 89% of those responding reported either a strong devotion or some devotion to Mary. So we really sense her maternal presence just by those statistics that the survey uncovered.
All right, let me just read the stats here just so people get the idea of just how big of an impact Mama Mary has. Her role as Mother of the Church is borne out by the fact that a combined 89% of the respondents report having a strong devotion, 58% some devotion, 31% to Mary. Furthermore, 74% report their devotion to Mary has strengthened them. 34% are very much strengthened them, 41% in living out their ecclesial vocations. Now, the next one I think is super important because I think sometimes we forget on calling on the intercession of our Blessed Mother to foster more vocations. And this was the second point, the second finding, correct?
Yes, and in as much as the Blessed Mother gives us that just beautiful example of fruitful receptivity, that's her whole spirit, it is significant. This really popped out for me that when the clergy and religious superiors talked about discerning an ecclesial vocation, 71% reported praying the rosary privately during their time of discernment.
Wow. That is so refreshing because for years, and you know this as a theologian, and I don't know why it happened, but the rosary was frowned upon, and even in the seminaries they were saying, oh, that's old-fashioned, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, it is a bit of a mystery. Some speculate that maybe in the name of, the great ecumenical spirit coming out of Vatican II, perhaps Mary was unfortunately viewed as a bit of an impediment to advancing ecumenism. That's just a theory I've heard bandied about, but it seems that our Blessed Mother has made a beautiful comeback, so to speak.
Amen to that. All right, now the next one is really interesting, Marian apparitions and the impact of them on vocations.
Yes, I found it interesting. Of course, the big three finished highest in terms of approved apparitions and their related devotions having an impact on the original sense of a vocation for clergy and religious superiors. Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe were all between 44% for Fatima, Guadalupe 31%, but 14% reported that Medjugorje had a greater meaningful impact on their original sense of a vocation. And for me, that rang a bell with Cardinal Schönborn, who had shared in an interview with an Austrian newspaper that if there was something wrong about Medjugorje, he said, we'd have to dismiss half our seminarians, since so many of our priestly vocations are both directly and indirectly related to Medjugorje.
Wow.
And,
wow.
And that, resonates with me because the only reason I'm sitting here serving as a lay theologian is my life was changed through the what the church calls the spiritual experience of Medjugorje.
So we have 2 minutes left before the break, but I want to go over briefly number 4, and then we'll pick it up after the break, Dr. Dan. The Catholic Church and the Eucharistic Revival, and you mentioned in the research it's noteworthy that 80% of the respondents indicate that their devotion to the Blessed Mother has strengthened their Eucharistic devotion. Now that makes sense if you think she's Mary, Mother of the Eucharist, but I guess sometimes we don't think about that connection.
That's right. And, certainly with some of our non-Catholic brothers and sisters, they can view Mary as almost a threat to the centrality of Christ. Even among some Catholics, there can be that worry. But this shows, no, the Blessed Mother is truly all about leading us to Jesus and Jesus in the Eucharist. So I thought that was a nice complementary finding as we have had this Eucharistic revival in our country.
Yeah, in reading the results of this report, this survey, it's so encouraging to me as a cradle Catholic that people are getting Mary's role, the importance of who she is, and how nothing that she says or does, whether it's in Scripture, whether it's in the apparitions, everything always points back to her Son and the teachings of the Church. She never is going to lead us astray, and that's why this is so important. She is our mother, and Jesus told John when he was on the cross, "Behold your mother. Mother, behold your son.
Amen.
Son, behold your
Yes.
mother." Right? And
Yes.
Jesus was talking to all of us, not just St. John. More with Dr. Dan on this beautiful report, Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. We're listening to our mother, as in Mama Mary. Thank you. What a great report. Very encouraging. We'll be right back. Continuing our conversation on a beautiful topic, our beautiful Blessed Mother, Our Lady of Grace, our Queen of Heaven. Dr. Dan Osborn is a theologian for the Diocese of Saginaw, and we have the information is in. We have the results, and it's a beautiful Marian survey, and very, very encouraging about the impact, the strong impact our sweet dear Mama Mary has on our one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Dan, before we get back to the summaries, because you have a number of different points that we're going to continue to go through, if you could tell us, first of all, where people can get the results, because I think this is something, and I'd love your thoughts on this, this is something we could take to prayer, and maybe while doing the rosary, maybe read that and pray about Mary's role in the church, and how are we praying for vocations? How are we looking at the apparitions in terms of, are we taking them seriously? Are we studying them? What do you think?
Yes, the taking this to prayer, and that the results of the survey might even, bear good fruit, especially with our leadership in the church and at seminaries, to perhaps emphasize more, and also promoting vocations. Our Blessed Mother is key in all these things. And the full report actually can be found at the CARA website. So it's cara.georgetown.edu. Again, cara.georgetown.edu.
All right, let's go back to the main points in the survey in terms of what you discovered. Number 5, Pope John Paul II's promotion of the Marian consecration, according to St. Louis de Montfort, also appears to have had a significant impact, correct?
Very much so. And I was pleasantly surprised that 44% of all respondents reported that they had made this consecration along the lines of St. Louis de Montfort's original Marian consecration. Of course, this was the book that St. John Paul II said was on his bedside table, True Devotion to Mary, that provides us with the roadmap for making this consecration. And God bless Father Michael Gately for giving kind of an updated version of this in 33 Days to Morning Glory.
Yeah. And I think also Father Gately and Pope St. John Paul II helped us move past, unfortunately, that effort to say, well, let's be more ecumenical and kind of put our Blessed Mother and the Rosary aside, which I don't think I think we should have done the opposite. This is just my opinion, not that anybody asked me for it, but had we done a better job after Vatican II of explaining to our brothers and sisters outside the church why we pray the Rosary, what it is, why we have a devotion to Mary, who knows how many not only converts we would have had, but at least a better understanding and appreciation of what we do in the Catholic Church when it comes to particular types of prayer.
Fascinating you mention this, Teresa, because one of the roles I have here in the Diocese of Saginaw is Bishop Gruse's ecumenical delegate. And when I meet with, go out to lunch with pastors from other denominations, usually the first thing they want to talk about is Mary. And some are very admitting that they believe their denominations don't give enough attention to the Blessed Mother.
Wow. Now, will you be able to share this, or have you shared this information with those Protestant pastors with whom you meet?
Not yet. It's so fresh when I'll look forward to doing that.
I think that would be a great resource to give them, especially those who are realizing that of Mary's important role in the life of Christ and the overall church. All right, number 6 on the hit parade. Just as Mary's presence in the upper room during the 9 days before Pentecost was very important to the first bishops of the church, the apostles, so today the bishops of the U.S. rely greatly on Mary's maternal presence in their lives. So this, to me, is extremely encouraging. That number is pretty high, right?
It is an amazing 96% of the bishops responding to the survey reported that they have either a strong devotion or at least some devotion to Mary. So it is a very encouraging sign that our bishops rely on Mother Mary, and even in their ministry, 84% reported that they turn to Mary for spiritual assistance. And given the huge burdens on the shoulders of our bishops, that Mama is right there at their side is a great consolation.
Yeah. The next point that you make in this report or survey is that the Blessed Mother has a major role, and I think this is beautiful, especially considering that Mary is often, as we've been discussing, sometimes a hindrance, or it kind of holds people back from converting and coming back, or either coming back into communion with the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And conversions and reversions, she's very involved in those.
Very much so. And 71% reported, those who had conversions or reversions, that devotion to Mary had an impact on their decision either to join the church or return to their Catholic faith.
Do they get more specific as to what it was about Mary? Did they read about her? Did they hear about the Rosary? Do you know? Is there any more information on that?
I don't believe there was a subcategory, but that would be intriguing. Maybe in a survey in the future to get more into this fascinating finding. This one surprised me, Teresa.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, it surprises me as well, because every convert, not every, I'm generalizing too much, but so many converts with whom I speak tell me that Mary was a big stumbling block. And that until they actually at some points they just say, well, if I am accepting all the teachings of the church on the Eucharist and everything else and all the sacraments and what the church teaches on marriage and life, and then I have to just trust. They weren't there yet, but they still came into the church. So it's still at some point, even if people are converting or reverting, they're still trying to get over that stumbling block of thinking that Mary somehow is taking away from Jesus. So it would be really neat to find out what was it that brought that Mary did.
Yes, exactly. And, that's beautifully outlined in the classic Rome Sweet Home by Scott Hahn, how big of an issue, when he was moving toward the Catholic faith, the Mary issue was huge for his wife, Kimberly.
Right. All right. Now, the next one is really important and powerful. The Marian survey makes it clear, the results, that there's a need for stronger Mariological formation in seminaries, in religious institutions, and in permanent diaconate formation programs. And I can speak to that in permanent diaconate formation programs because I went through formation with my husband, Deacon Don, who's been a deacon now for almost 13 years. Almost half of respondents report that their studies were weak. Diaconate directors, 64% of them, and permanent deacons, 54%, top the list of those who consider their studies in Mariology to be lacking. Wow. That's disappointing.
Right. And hopefully this can be a springboard to strengthen Mariological formation across the board. It dovetails with a study that Dr. Festigi from Sacred Heart Seminary in Detroit had done a few years ago, where he just one by one went through all the seminaries in our country, and his findings were exactly this, that there's quite a lack of Mariological studies, even in our seminaries.
Did he find out why? Were there reasons as to why? Is it based on what we said earlier about coming out of Vatican II?
He did not share with me his own perspectives on that, but he did mention this to me as a point of not just concern, but an opportunity to take a fresh look at Mariology in our formation of clergy and religious.
Well, let me ask you, Dan, how do you hope that, because this is great information, this is very interesting and so important in terms of our understanding of the role of the Blessed Mother in the Church and how people view Mary across the board in the Church. How do you hope this information will be used? What are I know you said you're going to be using it in your role as an ecumenical leader in the Diocese of Saginaw, but how else can we use this information, do you think?
Yes, when you mentioned about praying around this survey, the results of the survey, I think if the prayer could be, if I can humbly ask, that this really help the Church take a pause, bishops, pastors, religious superiors, deacon directors, and just to prayerfully consider how might we, build on these findings. Mary is so key in the life of the Church. How in my particular diocese, my particular formation program, my seminary, how might we really honor her and strengthen the Mary element?
How do we get this out there to tell people about the results of this survey from Kara?
Well, thankfully, it's getting now attention in the press, the Catholic media, and I'm hoping to send it also to some key leadership people in the Church as well.
All right, let's look at the Rosary. This is number 9, and we have 3 more after this, and I want to make sure we get through all of them. So the Rosary continues to hold a place of great importance in the devotional life of Catholic leadership. And this is another very strong number in terms of how many people are praying the Rosary.
Yes, 80% of bishops reporting said that they pray the Rosary privately, and 77% of diocesan priests said the same. So that's a lot of power with our Catholic leadership in our country. Praise God.
Amen. And the next one, and this is a responsibility on all of us, and I'm glad this is in here, the domestic church, as in the family, by far the most powerful setting to cultivate Marian devotion, right?
That's right. 79% of respondents said that it was in the home where they really received their love of Mary and devotion to Mary.
There you go, moms and dads. Pray that rosary with your kids. That's very, very important. All right, number 11. In discerning a vocation to a particular religious community or diocese, religious priests and women major superiors topped the list of those who say that Marian dimension of the community they joined was significant or very significant. That's interesting.
yes, again, the synergy between the Marian spirit and openness to God's call. Pope Benedict XVI loved the image of Mary as the holy soil, that receptive, fruitful ground for the seed of the divine word to take root and come to fruition. So this really shows that, for those called to a religious vocation, the Marian dimension is key.
And you say in terms of the summary that you gave us here to discuss this morning that you're hoping that the research project, the Marian Research Project, is well received not only by clergy, correct, but by the rest of us in the church.
Yes, that to realize how, and this really comes from the Swiss theologian Hans Urs von Balthasar, that there's a priority in terms of the Marian dimension as opposed to what's called the Petrine, the St. Peter dimension, which is about, governance, structures, discipline, and all of that. But what struck me is, whereas the St. Peter aspect of the church is understandably committed to, unity, sometimes uniformity, the variety we see, like a magnificent garden when it comes to the Marian dimension. When the respondents, gave the different Marian titles, works of art, literature, Marian devotions, it was just an incredible array of variety, and just more like a garden.
I think this is so beautiful, and I think it's so helpful, and it could be used in so many different ways. And I would love to see this shared in OCIA classes too, Dan, for those coming into the church. And I think this would be super important to help people understand the importance and the role of Mary. Thank you for doing this. I know you worked very hard on this. We appreciate you, and we will put the resource out there. Again, Mama Mary, listen to your mother, as in our Blessed Mother, Queen of the Church. Mary, Mother of the Eucharist, pray for us. She's there. We just have to call on her intercession. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection in the second hour here on EWTN Radio Extra. Don't forget to tune in to all of our great programs, radio and TV-wise. My friend Raymond Arroyo and his wonderful World Over program, EWTN News Nightly, EWTN News in Depth, Pro-Life Weekly, and so much more. EWTN.com for all the information. Speaking of EWTN, my friend Doug Keck will be with us tomorrow for our Inside Word, so you don't miss a thing. Every week we give you a highlight of what's coming up on our network. So you can stay tuned, make a note of it, or maybe record something here, there, or everywhere. Then we're also going to be talking in Fact Check Friday about how PBS and NPR, they're clutching their pearls because they're saying we're not biased. Why are they taking away money from us? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Talk about denial. There's a country song. I'm not a country music fan, but some of the writing in country music is amazing. A song came out many years ago by Pam Tillis called Queen of Denial. Call me Cleopatra, because I'm the queen of denial. These people are in denial. Even a very liberal editor, so liberal, openly admitting that he never voted for a Republican, was raised in liberal areas of California, and he left NPR I think it was last year. Is it last year now? Yeah, earlier last year, because of the bias. He felt that they were not doing their job in terms of giving chances to different voices on the network. And now they're all upset saying they're being accused of being biased when they're really not. We'll discuss. Have a great Thursday. Talk to you on a Friday. A domani. Ciao, ciao.